I am so excited for today's interview. I am here with Brian Emerson, entrepreneur, company founder, CEO, published author, PhD. Oh my goodness. Welcome. How are you? It's good to see you.
See you too. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Really good. Really good. Thanks.
Good.
So you founded your leadership company, Andiron, based on the concept of polarities. And you work with leaders of businesses and organizations? Yeah?
Mhm.
So I have a two-part question. What led you to want to help people in this way? And how do you help them specifically in your work?
Yeah. Even the one part question is only two questions, but I'll try. So I think the first part to the question is when after I finished graduate school, it's really more for me about systems and helping systems, right? When I finished graduate school, I spent some time working in Africa, helping convert school systems from Afrikaans to English when Namibia gained its independence from South Africa. And I got really interested there, right, in what does it take for people to change a system, right? And in what ways do the human dynamics get, you're schmurgled up in there, and they are it. And I just decided when I came home, that's what I was going to do. I was going to really look at. We spend all of our lives inside of multiple systems, our family systems, our societal systems, our organizational systems. And I thought, how can I help people be better inside of a system? And so that's, I think, really when we look at what do I do with leaders and organizations, it's about what does it take? What do they need to be doing to make the system as good as it can possibly be, no matter what that looks like for them, right? That's sort of.
Now, when you were in Africa, I imagine you probably were coming up against these systems have been in place for decades, perhaps. So that must have been really difficult. And I imagine you find that at workplaces too. Well, we've always done it this way. So that must be kind of hard. I guess people have to be open to the change at the get-go.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, because when you're looking at systemic change, systems, they're like any biological system, right? A human system's like any biological system, and so therefore it's got a memory. And we're all part of it, right? And so if you want to be a leader inside of a system, there's a couple things. One, you really need to know, how do I influence the system, right? So, and how does the system influence me, right? And how well do I know my system, right? Because each of us is a system, right? And so that's really what I was really attracted to, this whole idea of organizations and developing organizations. And through that, over the years, that was 25 years ago, and then over the years, got more and more really focused in on the individual level, and really like the individual leader, and how do leaders develop and transform and be their best and be bigger inside of systems, so inside organizations.
Right. And I would imagine even though you are hired specifically for this purpose, you may come up against roadblocks. And do you ever come up against any egos with these leaders?
No, never. No, there's never any egos. So
That's right.
that's what makes it really easy, right?
I imagine that'd be hard to navigate.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing, right? For all of us, it's ego work, right? It's about who we are and how we make sense of the world and how we make sense of ourselves in the world, right? So there's tons of ego stuff, that shows up, but I think creating that container, I find creating that container and trying to find ways to create the space for people to do that work, right, is one of the most challenging and humbling and fulfilling spaces to play. It's just amazing. When we had a leader, when we really decided to get serious about leadership development, we were running a program, and there was a guy who stood up at the end and he said, I know I'm a better leader because I took my 360 at the beginning and I've got my results now. And I know that I've really, this program has really made me a better leader. He said, but more importantly, it's made me a better father. Like, more importantly, it's made me a better partner. Like, and for me, like, hearing that, and for the people on our team, we were like, and that's why you do this, right? Because it's not just the organizational, if we go back to systems, it's not just the organizational system, it's all the systems that these people are a part of, right? I mean, so it's an amazing place I get to play. I can't believe I get to do what I do.
Wow.
Most days.
That is, yeah, right. That's so cool, because I guess if we were thinking to ourselves, I want to make a change, and maybe even in this case, I want to choose happiness more, or I want to live my life differently, or I want to be more aware, or something like that. We have to have the humility to say, I'm not perfect. I do need to make this change.
Yeah.
And that's often really the first step.
Yeah. The
Wow.
shift starts here, 9 times out of 10, right? The shift, it can be about our mindset. It can be about our perspective. It can be, like if you're going to choose happiness, right? We are, as humans, we are just sense making, like, monsters. Like, all we want to do is make sense of stuff, right? So we take little pieces of data and we force them together into a story about how we think the world is operating, right? And then and of course then we look for data to support that, right, or not, and we only choose the data that supports the story, right? And we forget that many times we're the creator of the story. Like, we're creating the story, right? And so really realizing that, we are at choice as to what data we're bringing into the story and what data I'm not bringing into the story, and what pieces I'm looking at and what pieces I'm not looking at. And so all of that, though, really requires us to get really honest with ourselves, like, to the ego piece, right? Of, like, who am I and how might I be wrong in the story I'm creating, right, around all that. So
And I think so often too, we look to externals like, oh, well, look what's going on in the world. How could I possibly be happy? Or when I finally get my dream job, then I'll be happy. Or when I buy that perfect house, I'll be happy. But it never works like that.
never. I mean, and so for me, I think, because one of my questions for you would be, as I was thinking about today, I was like, well, what is happiness? And what's it mean to be happy? Like, what does that even mean? And so, and if happiness is always, I think it's Sean Acor who says, if happiness is always on the other side of the next goal, like you just said, when I get that house, when I get that job, when my kid graduates from college, like, whatever it is, you're never going to be, like, happiness is in the now, right? And so for me, I think I spend a lot more time, being grateful than maybe being happy, and I think it's sort of, I'm wondering if that's a better, for me, a better way for me to think about it, right? Is this whole idea of, what am I grateful for now, right? That's where the happiness is. The happiness isn't what I'm hoping to be grateful for, right? The happiness is now. And so,
You
because
just
sorry, go ahead.
So you just blew my mind, because I'm doing this whole choose happiness thing, but I thought, I wonder if that puts pressure on people to be like, I can't be happy right now. I can't choose this right now. So I'm stuck. And maybe in those cases we say, choose gratitude, choose contentment, choose peace, and take the pressure off the, if you will, happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because, I don't know, because I mean, I would like to say, oh yeah, you can always choose happiness, right? You can always choose to be happy, but maybe there are times when you can't, but you can always choose to be grateful,
I just need like a minute.
think I do too.
Wow. 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 That's,
I mean,
thank
because I'm thinking, uh, thankfully, both my parents are still alive, but I was just thinking, like, what would be a really time when happiness might be hard? And I was like, well, maybe at the death of one of my parents. And I don't know if I could choose happiness then, but I'm sure that in that moment, I would be able to find gratitude. Like I can imagine myself, and I can only imagine, right? But I can imagine myself being completely, utterly devastated and still being able to find gratitude,
Mhm.
right? For the relationship that I had with my parents, for the, and for, and I'm wondering, in from a polarity perspective, right? Now you got me going. From a polarity perspective, right? We realize that happiness doesn't exist without whatever the opposite of that is. Is it sorrow? Is it flatness? It's like, it is, it's whatever what's the opposite of happiness?
Well, my thought would be sadness.
Okay, sadness, right? So then if we say sadness, right, then, then it's actually without sadness, there'd be no happiness. And so we actually need sadness. And so how do we appreciate the times? How do we appreciate the times that aren't happy? Because those are the things that actually make happy times possible, right? Like, and I guess in those moments, maybe finding gratitude
Well,
is
that
the.
makes so much sense because I can tell from living when we lived in Seattle and it rained all the time. I was so grateful for the sunshine. Whereas
Yeah.
if it's sunny all the time, sometimes you can take it for granted, like, oh, it's sunny again today. So it's that I totally get that the polarity thing. That's just one example, of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's probably something in that, right? Is about, can we choose, how do we find ways to stay for me, as we're talking about it, I think for me it's about how do I find ways to stay grateful, right? And how do I find ways because that's going to lead me to happiness in the moment.
Yes. Can you share anything that you do in your daily practice, daily life when you choose gratitude?
um, well, I do that, actually. That's one of the things, right now, well, for the last couple of years, people have been big on gratitude journals, right? And, journaling about what you're grateful for. And I think that's great, only I'm a terrible journaler. And so I don't. So what I do instead, is I modify that, and I will end the day, sort of my good night prayers, if you will, sort of my now I lay me down to sleep, right? Is taking the time to think of three things, from the day that I'm grateful for, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes those things are really big, and sometimes they're really small. you know I mean, sometimes it's as much as I've got a soft pillow under my head in a warm room. Like, it's like it can be, which I say is small, and that's actually a really big thing. But I mean, so they're not necessarily earth-shattering things, but it's about finding things that I'm grateful for. A conversation that I had, or the support and love I got from someone, or you know, yeah, because I think that just opens the theory behind that, right, is that it opens our eyes to look for more things for which to be grateful. And so keeping our eyes open to now, I think, is different than, to your great point of, I'm not grateful for the house that I want to get, or for the job that I want to get, right? But it's about what's happening now. So I think the gratitude thing is a big thing. So when I'm working with leaders, I will often encourage them to either gratitude journal, or to think about it, or to keep a bulleted list, or whatever the case may be. And on my better days, I try to do that when I wake up, and I try to say, what's one thing that I'm looking forward to being grateful about today. And
I'm looking forward to being grateful about today, which is different than something I'm looking forward to doing or something.
exactly, yeah. So I'm not as good at that one. So I don't want you to think like, oh, I do this every morning. No, I'm not as good at that, because I'm not really a morning person. I'd say that, probably 50% of the time I hit it, where I'm like, okay, so what's something what's something that at the end of the day, I'm going to be grateful for, that I'm looking forward to.
And what's great about that is it puts the expectation at your day that there is going to be something to be grateful for, and then you can be aware of finding it.
Yep.
I need another minute. Wow, wow. Well, if I may ask, when you experience personal or professional roadblocks, are there some other concrete things you've done, or can you talk about maybe tools in a toolbox someone can have if they're not doing so well, they can reach for?
Yeah, so I think gratitude is a big one. I think for me, when I'm hit a challenging time, I try to shift myself out of short term and think about long term. Because I think that many times, sort of the roadblock is a short term roadblock, right? Or the challenge is a short term, as opposed to thinking, let's put this in the context of the next 5 years, right? Let's put this in the context of 1 billion years on Earth. What's really, because I think we can get so, as I said earlier, we're picking up and we're making these stories. Well, our stories become like the headliner, when it's like, and that's the ego, right? And it's sort of like, so this really just isn't that big of a deal, right? So I think also I tend to, from a polarity perspective, there's this polarity between we have to act and live as though everything is of the utmost importance, right? Because everything really, really matters, right? And at the same time, nothing matters at all, right? Like nothing really matters, and I tend to personally hold things too tightly, right? I because things are so serious and I can get so, and so for me, it's about when I realize that I'm starting to get tight, right? Is to realize, okay, so how do I hold this more loosely? How do I just loosen my grip? Like, how do I loosen my attachment in this moment to what what is it that I really want? Or what is it that I'm really afraid of, right? And just to loosen up on that, I think is so important, because happiness doesn't come from this. This isn't happy. So,
Yeah.
no, I think, and on the flip side, right, the too loose, right, that's not happy either. Like, you're too loose is not happy either, right? So maybe it's like, never thought about this before, but maybe instead of it's about like holding the ball or catching the ball, maybe it's more like juggling, right? Like, where where there's a holding it loosely, right? Because you can't hold it, but at the same time, taking it seriously and concentrating and all of that. No, I'm a terrible juggler. So, but I would imagine.
Only literally, figuratively, you're a great juggler.
If we were charading right now, what? Look.
All right, let me think. Because it is all that, juggling really is give and take, if you will, and you do have to concentrate on it or they will all fall. But you're right, you can't hold on to anything too tightly. Oh, wow, that's brilliant. Wow. And I know that nature plays a big role in your life.
Yeah.
Can you speak about spending time in nature for you?
I love the water, and I think that that's another place to just be in the moment. When you ask about sort of getting back into it, another thing is for me is really coming back to what I know are my values, and to be able to ask myself, like, in this moment, to like, where are my values being pinched, or where are my values not being honored, or where can I really step more fully into a value. And I know that being on the water is one of those places where I'm able to tap into a lot of what's important to me, and sort of that regrounding in the moment, and finding, just being in the moment. So
Yeah, water's a happy place for me too, so I totally get that. So tell me, where can people find Andiron and the books that you've published as well, Dr. Emerson?
The books are on Amazon. One is Navigating Polarities, which is all about polarities and how do leaders and organizations hold these interdependent tensions, right? More with a both and mindset, and to be able to realize that I need to hold it tightly and hold it loosely, right, at the same time, because we are wired for either or, right? Is the way that our brains are wired. So how do we do both of those things simultaneously? So that book's on Amazon. And Andiron.com is a new organization. My other organization, Riverstone Endeavors, joined forces with the Lewis Leadership Group back in March, and we're now Andiron.com. So that website is launching momentarily.
Ooh.
So yeah, I mean, so by the time someone goes to andiron.com, it may or may not be. We'll see.
We will hope for the best, and we'll have those lists under the video as well. I cannot thank you enough. You have given me so much to think about, and I feel like I'm going to keep coming back to this conversation many, many times. This was just wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and for your
Yes, thank you. No, thank you for giving me the chance to think about it. It's always fun to learn and to think through this stuff. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right. See you soon.
Bye.